días y bienvenidos a todos. Gracias a los que estáis aquí, a los que nos siguen a través de casa, a través de streaming, que yo creo que vino con la pandemia y se quedará con todos nosotros eso de que nos puedan ver en todos los países, aunque no estén en este mismo instante. Segunda jornada en Worldcanic, el primer Congreso Internacional de Cocinas y Ecosistemas Volcánicos. Bueno, ayer tuvimos una interesante jornada en un paraíso natural, los jameos del agua, surgidos además precisamente bajo un túnel de lava. Hoy estamos en Finca Testeina, entre viñedos, volcanes, a los pies del volcán de Testeina y situados en pleno paisaje protegido de la Jeria y en el enclave del Parque Natural de los Volcanes, aquí en Lanzarote, y también con un programa perfecto para los más curiosos. Vamos a comenzar cocinando gracias a los volcanes. Por un lado, pan y por el otro, cocido das furnas. Vamos a conocer más de la Garrocha en Cataluña, una zona volcánica con más de 40 volcanes, donde destaca además la gastronomía del Scols con 2 estrellas Michelin. Después vamos a seguir conociendo más puntos de vista de la vulcanología y de cómo convivir con los volcanes y vamos a terminar pues poniendo cara y voz a algunos de los productores de la zona que tenemos aquí hoy en nuestro congreso. Vamos a empezar y vamos a comenzar un poco lejos, en Islandia, con el chef y panadero Sigi, que es así como le llaman, que elabora el pan en suelo volcánico. Nos va a mostrar y nos va a explicar pues cómo la gente de Islandia ha utilizado la actividad geotérmica a lo largo de los años para calentar y cocinar las casas, y eso lo han llevado a cabo precisamente para hacer el pan. En estos instantes va a comenzar nuestro congreso y empezamos con Sigurður Rafn Hilmarsson, chef y propietario del Laugarband Fontana Geothermal Spa en Islandia. Adelante. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I want to start by thanking the organizers of the Worldcanic and the board to invite me here and my wife to this beautiful island. It was crazy to come from a snowy storm in Iceland and land here in this paradise, and we are really grateful to be here. I'm going to do a little presentation about our rye bread that we make in our hometown, and I believe I need some to switch the slides. Yeah. There you can see a picture of me just by the springs. You can see a big hot spring there that I will talk to you about later. Around that big hot spring we have a lot of cracks in the ground that brings us boiling water, and we have been using those cracks and these holes to bake rye bread for decades. And this is something my grandmother used to do, and my mother and a lot of other locals in this village. So we are we are honoring the history. There we have the first slide, and I just wanted to point out that in Iceland we have a lot of hot springs, and today we heat up about 90% of all houses in Iceland with geothermal water, and this is one of the stations that brings hot water to the capital city. Greenhouses, we have a lot of greenhouses, and we use the hot water to heat them up, and in about 1930 we got our first greenhouse. We were importing all vegetables, for example cucumbers, that we just recently started producing enough in the country for us to consume, also all our visitors, and we are now also exporting cucumbers to the Faroe Islands and the Greenland. So it's amazing to be exporting greens in this snowy land. Next slide. This is my beautiful village that I grew up in, and I am a general manager here at the Fontana Spa. And here in this building right here, I will tell you about a little later, we have the geothermal spa. In this village we have 3 hot springs, and we have this so-called big one that we use to heat up every house in the village, the swimming pool, and basically everything we need to heat up. We even heat up the pavement so we don't have to shovel snow. Over at the spa I'm working in, we have this steam bath. So this building is basically placed on top of a hot spring, and when you're sitting in there, you are getting the heat, the steam, and everything directly from underneath. So it's as natural as you can have it for steam bathing. Now we have the third one, and this one is the most historical one, and in about the year 1000 or so, when Icelanders were being Christianized, these Vikings were doing it at the national park 20 minutes away in a freezing cold water, and at some point some of these Vikings said, you know, let's go over to this little village and do this in warm water. And there are actually written documents about this. Now the rye bread, how did it start for me? Or us, my wife here. We were running a summer hotel in the village, and we were both managing the hotel, and I was also running the kitchen. And we always served this rye bread for breakfast. And one day we decided to put a little announcement in the reception offering the guests of the hotel to go with the chef tonight to dig up rye bread from the hot spring. And we had no idea if anyone would come along. Now that evening, you know, I was in the kitchen, we had a lot of groups, and I was really, you know, really busy. And by the end of the night, I went down to the hot spring and was gonna dig up this bread, and I remembered I put the announcement in the reception. So I drove my car back to the hotel, and as I got there, there were 80 people waiting. So I had to park my car and invite them for a walk, and we went down there, we dig up this bread, and I gave them all it for tasting, and we didn't have any bread for breakfast the day after, but we really saw this time that this was really interesting to people. So, you know, as the day go by, I was offered this job to be a manager at the Fontana Spa, and we started offering tours from the spa to the spring, and that's how it all started. At this point, I want to show you the whole process of how I mix the dough, put it in the ground, get it up, put a little butter on it, and so if we could have the video, please. This was the next slide. Like they say in television, anything can happen when you're doing live. So we often cook eggs in these boiling spots. This is the big hot spring. And here we have the ingredients. The rye. Really simple recipe that, like I said, got from my grandmother. The flour, the sugar, baking powder, and salt. Milk. Get stirred up good. Okay, you can see the smoke all over there. The steam, I mean. We use stainless steel pots, and we wrap them with plastic so the groundwater doesn't get inside. You just dig a hole until you come to a boiling point, and you just put it down there and leave it for 24 hours. It takes 24 hours to bake. Then the day after, you can see how it's boiling all around it, looking delicious, right? Yeah. We rinse it up a little bit in the lake. Actually, the water in the lake is warm, close to the hot springs. Beautiful. Yes. And when I cut the bread and I open it up and I have a perfect bread like this one, I say, Grandma would be proud. Yeah. We have the smoked trout there. This trout is from the lake just by the village, and there is a farmer on the other side of the lake that's doing all the smoking. This is exactly the same thing I will present to you today for the lunch, except the bread is not warm from the hot spring. All right. Have a little taste. Ah, yes. So good. Okay. Now this is something we often do. It's also tastes very well with the bread. We cook the eggs. We just put them in the boiling spots and we leave them for 11, 12, 13 minutes. And that's just a fun way to cook an egg. And yeah, how do I go back? Yes. Yeah, like I said, from our spa, we have now the geothermal rye bread tours, and we basically just walk from the spa to the spring area where we tell the guests about the hot springs and how we use the hot water in the village, and then we tell them about the bread, and then we dig up the bread in front of them so they show the whole process. And here she is digging up bread. The next one is ready to go down, and then we either consume it right on spot, or if the weather is not good, we just walk to the spa and we give them a taste in the spa, as she is doing right there. And we are getting thousands of tourists to come and see this. So that's really a nice thing. Everyone gets to taste the bread just like there. My cooking today is not very complicated, but I brought with me from Iceland, I brought with me bread, and I brought with me trout from the lake, and I brought with me Icelandic butter. And this is so local that the butter is even local. It's from the cows close to Laugarvatn, produced in a village there close by. Okay. Okay. So I just slice this up here a little bit. Okay. Then we put a little butter on this. My grandfather, he always said that you have to have this thickness of bread, same of butter, and same of trout. Okay, then we have the trout here. And we just là. This you will all get to taste later on today. All right. Okay. So thank you very much. All right.
Muchas gracias. La verdad es que nos ha dejado sorprendidos con esa cocina del pan volcánica y luego vamos a tener ocasión de probarlo, o sea que lo hemos visto y luego lo probaremos. Y seguimos cocinando con volcanes porque ahora toca el turno de ir hasta las Azores con el chef Paulo Costa, que nos va a explicar bueno, pues cómo elabora el plato más famoso de la isla, que es el cocido das furnas, que lo cocinan en suelo volcánico. São Miguel es la isla más grande del archipiélago de las Azores portuguesas y cuenta con este plato único y singular, el cocido das furnas, al que vamos a conocer ahora, un estofado del volcán, como ellos le llaman, y que se hace pues enterrando varias carnes y verduras en el suelo volcánico para cocinar con él. Pero mejor que os lo cuente Paulo Costa, chef en Caldeiras y Vulcoes Furnas, en Azores, Portugal. Paulo Costa, adelante. Paulo, adelante. Un aplauso, por favor.
Hello, my name is Paulo Costa. I'm from Portugal, mainly from Azores, Furnas. I would like to show you the famous dish over there. We call it the cozido das furnas, but unfortunately we cannot do it here. It's mostly, we do it over there. So I can show you a small demonstration of the dish by video. Can you play the video, please? This area, it's all a volcano, and it's a sleeping volcano, and you have a lot of steam, geothermal steam. In the oven you can adjust the temperature, you can see how it is, you have a window to see it, and the whole thing is cooking in blind. When you go to the Azores, you know you have to eat the cozido. It's like if you go to Rome, you don't see the Vatican. It's about 80, 90 years old history of cozido. In old times, it was mostly for a feast activity, or maybe Christmas, and mainly for when the workers wanted like a cheap cooking. This is my grandfather, Jamanosa. He's the one that taught over here the tradition of the cuisine, in our case, in our family. He taught to my father, and my father taught to me. The preparation we do it always the day before. It's always start with the base. You have the hard meats. You have the beef, the pork, the pig feet, pig ears. Then we put the potatoes, all the vegetables, cabbage, and we put the chorizo and the blood sausage. Why we put the blood sausage in the top? So the flavors of the sausage goes all the way down. At 4 a.m. we put it inside the holes. It's a really slow cooking. It takes 6, 7, 8 hours, depending on what type of the season you are in. You gotta have a lot of love in the dish. I remember 20 years ago, this was totally different. Back in the days, it was just the dirt. There was no cement holes. They all do it for the cozido, just put the meat in a table blanket and put it all inside and go inside the ground. There's still some people that will do it old schools.
Estamos na casa da minha sogra, vizinhos também vêm, pedem para usar a caldeira. Eles fazem o cozido, fazem a bacalhoada, a feijoada e há pessoas que também fazem arroz doce, fica muito saboroso.
O sabor enxofre que diziam que o cozido tem, não existe. Está ótimo, 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 ótimo. Não conhecemos mais nenhum sítio no mundo que faça cozidos desta maneira na terra. É fantástico, fantástico.
Ver la televisão. So, hope you enjoy a little bit of experience about furnas. In this case, we're going to do codfish. You can change the slide, please. This is a small example of my village. We have the furnace, the village, and down over there, and the hot springs, and mineral waters. So it's a very green over here, very different from here. Can you change the slide, please? So over there, we do different types of geothermal cooking. We do cozido dos furnas, the most famous one. The one I'm going to show you is the bacalhoada nas caldeiras. Beanstalk is feijoada. Caldeirada de peixe with fresh fish. And the extra, we do rice beans, sweet rice, cakes too, bread sometimes, just like in Iceland. You can change the slide, please. So mostly we're going to talk about the cozido. This is our dish. So you can see it's a really heavy meal. It has potatoes, pig feet, pork, cabbage, cenoura, chicken. So it's cooked like to 6 to 7 hours, and it has no stock. What is the stock? Mixed by the vapor. All the vapor, the steams, the juices of the meats go all around with the chorizo and the blood sausage. You can change the slide, please. This is yeah, it's okay. It's okay. This is an example how we take it out at daytime. Maybe you can see it. There's a lot of turns over there at that time because the time when all the people go see how they take it out. Can chase, please. Change. The video, the other video. The other one? Yes. This is an interesting video I filmed in this summer, about 9 years ago. It shows how it's open and digged out. In this case, we're going to start doing our dish. This one is bacalhau. It's we put onions, potatoes, carrots. We have Azorean spices. We call it pimenta de terra, tiras de pimenta, açafrão, chorizo, bacon, bacalhau. Portuguese have to have bacalhau, and salsa. It's parsley. Okay, can change the. Oh, it's showing. So we're gonna podemos cortar ervas. Tiene los huevos, la pimenta, la bacalhau está cocido. If it was in the hot springs, it would take like 3 to 4 hours. It's different from the meat. The meat is 6 to 7 hours. It's different because it's fish. It cooks very fastly. There you go. Can change the slides. Show the fish, the dish. So it's a really heavy meal. we can finish here. Pimenta. Huevos. Caldo. Azafrán. Un poco de verde. Aquí está el plato. The plates. Next slide, please. Oh, this is an example how it was in old times. In old times we didn't use any pots, just the sheets. And all the meats were all inside. For example, the sausage, they had all inside the chicken, the meats, potatoes. It was a really more dry food. So that's why they tried to change it with the pots, so get a little bit more moist. Another one, please. Another picture. That's about in the 70s, 60s, something like that. And this is a small picture of my village. I think you'll enjoy to have a nice taste of Azores and Furnace in that case. Hope you enjoyed. That's it.
Nos damos cuenta, ¿verdad?, de lo cercano que es a veces la gastronomía, lo cerquita que estamos de Portugal, y yo creo que en sus platos lo podemos comprobar, ¿no? Perfectamente podría ser un plato que hubiéramos hecho cerca de esa zona. Si hay algo interesante en este congreso, yo creo que es que estamos tocando la versión y la parte más gastronómica, pero también estamos aprendiendo mucho, ¿no? Estamos intentando aprender qué hay más allá de los volcanes, ¿no? Y cómo se puede, bueno, pues aprender un poco más de la geología y del paisaje. Ahora toca esa parte un poco más científica, con Llorén Planagumá, es coordinador científico de la Volcano Active Foundation, y nos va a enseñar o nos va a hablar de una zona bastante cercana, en la Garrocha, que tenemos en Cataluña, una zona pues donde hay cerca de 40 volcanes, y él ya nos ha dicho que los volcanes son un peligro para las sociedades, pero también unos grandes aliados que nos dan suelos ricos, paisajes espectaculares, grandes gastronomías y fuentes de inspiración. Será lo que más o menos nos va a contar a continuación Llorens Planagumá, coordinador científico de la Volcano Active Foundation. Adelante, Llorens.
Hola, buenos días, gracias. Bueno, buenos días. La verdad es agradecer pues, la invitación a este congreso que yo creo que es tan necesario de cocinas volcánicas y en territorios volcánicos y además la ciencia. Agradecer pues, a los organizadores, al Cabildo, a Vocento, a GSR, pero también a todos los que nos acompañan. Agradecer al conductor del bus, a la gente que nos atiende al hotel. Yo creo que son gente imprescindible para que esto llegue a funcionar bien. Y sin más, pues me presento, ya me han presentado, yo me llamo Llorens, yo soy de la Garrocha, mis abuelos eran de la Garrocha. Por parte de padre eran campesinos y por parte de madre obreros, que hablaré un poco, aunque soy geólogo, eran obreros de una fábrica de papel que había encima de unas coladas de lava en Sant Joan les Fonts. Y bueno, un poco, yo creo que está bien que ayer Joan y Gino pues hicieran su intervención, sobre todo porque yo vengo después, y ahora explico por qué yo vengo después. Es decir, mi trabajo, me gusta decir que empieza cuando se terminan las erupciones. Empieza mi trabajo, es decir, cuando, por ejemplo, La Palma, ¿no?, que está erupcionando, ahí tenéis el volcán, que ahora hay muchos geólogos, y, para no decir vulcanólogos, porque tampoco hay tantos, cuando hay un congreso tampoco hay tantos, pero hay muchos geólogos, curiosos, turistas que van, pero esta erupción más tarde o temprano se va a terminar. Y después es cuando se termina que empezaría mi trabajo, es decir, esos productos volcánicos esas coladas de lava, esos piroclastos, pues, ay, perdón, que tengo, ¿qué hacemos, ¿no?, con esos? Y un poco es que realmente si se pueden valorizar bien, si al final la población se adapta a los productos volcánicos, sean más recientes o más antiguos, esto genera beneficios sociales para el territorio y también económicos. Y esto sería un poco lo que explicaré que mi laboratorio, ¿no?, al final también hay gente, los cocineros tienen sus laboratorios, ¿no? Hay que hacen experimentos, o sea, estos platos no los improvisan de un día para otro. Lleva tiempo, pues, macerando la idea, lleva tiempo probando, ensayando, pues, de lo que explicaba antes, mi laboratorio es mi tierra, que es la Garrocha, la tierra de volcanes, de 40 volcanes, en lo cual también estamos haciendo ensayo-error, pues, hacia ver, observar cómo los volcanes generan este beneficio social y económico. ¿De acuerdo? Y en el Congreso alguien dijo una frase que yo creo que está muy acertada, y es que somos lo que comemos, ¿no? Y a mí me gusta añadir una segunda parte, que es también somos lo que pisamos. Es decir, lo que pisamos es el terreno donde estamos. Y aquí me gustaría, incluso a veces yo en unas charlas que doy, me gusta preguntar diciendo, bueno, puede gente de diferente lugar, pero es igual, incluso gente de la Garrocha, ¿vosotros conocéis las rocas donde vivís? Es decir, vuestra casa, ¿conocéis de qué rocas está hecha? Y esto es importante, porque depende de qué rocas. Y aquí podría añadir la pregunta que seguramente muchos de aquí contestaríais, pues bueno, las rocas donde vivimos son volcanes, porque es un congreso de cocina y volcanes, ¿no? Pero bueno, yo añadiré otra pregunta. ¿Vosotros sabéis qué tipo de volcanes tenéis debajo de vuestros pies? Y aquí ya sería más difícil y seguramente habría más dudas. Y es importante, y esto, cuando hablamos de esta conservación, de estos beneficios sociales y económicos, también tenemos que incorporar que la sociedad es muy importante saber en qué terreno vive, porque esto lo hará más resiliente, claro, es una palabra de moda, ¿no? Más resiliente, sobre todo porque la ayudará a adaptarse, la ayudará a entender qué puede pasar ahí, no solo en volcanes, sino en otras cosas. Es decir, incluso en volcanes, si la gente vive encima de unas lavas que son masivas y duras, pues es diferente que si vive encima de, no es el caso de Lanzarote, pero en mi tierra, de cenizas que se han convertido en arcillas, ¿no? Que es un suelo, pues, que puede generar más vulnerabilidad, depende también. Estamos en una zona de terremotos, en terremotos. Bueno, es un ejemplo. Y sin más, después de esta introducción, yo ya empiezo y os explico. Mi presentación será básicamente fotos para ir comentando pinceladas de lo que considero que la Garrocha tiene que ver. Es decir, la Garrocha es como es ahí mi teoría gracias a los volcanes.
And how I've been able to develop my own theories because of the fact that those volcanoes are there in the first place. So let's take a look at some photos, and I will talk you through them.
Sí, hay un problema con el puntero, pero ya lo iremos solucionando. Previamente, ya entrando en tema, Joan ya comentó, visteis ayer,
down to the nitty-gritty
su charla, pues que pasó un mapa. Yo ya paso la segunda parte de ese mapa, o sea, de territorios volcanes en el mundo hay muchos.
And as you can see from the map, there are a multitude of volcanoes across the world. Some are on tectonic plates, and some are between plates, the interplate volcanoes. Like here in the Canary Islands, we can see yellow and red dots on the map. The red dots are historically active volcanoes. That means that they've been written down in the annals of history, like Pompeii or Vesuvius. The Canary Islands, there are many of them, and in Europe, if we zoomed in, we will zoom in, we can see that in Europe that we have yellow dots. This means that we do not have any historical records of these volcanoes, but they are considered to be active. Okay, so red and yellow are active, but they're not currently active. We quite simply do not have historical records of the yellow dots. They're not written down anywhere. Let's move on to the next slide, please.
Pues
So if we zoom into the map of Europe, we could perhaps see this as a sub-conference within the overall conference. Cooking, volcanic cooking, and European volcanoes could be the sub-theme. And there's a rift, a fault line that was formed many thousands of years ago across the continent. And you can see it goes through Germany, Czech Republic, middle of France, through Catalonia, and all the way down to Morocco. And some people even draw a link between this rift and the Canary Islands. They think it even reaches to the Canary Islands. And many of these spots are protected natural areas because they have rich soils, they are farmland. So there's a great amount of human activity that takes place on these volcanic areas. We can see Garrocha is there, number 5, but in France, in Germany, north of Prague, Czech Republic there too, on the Iberian Peninsula as well. We have in the Mar Menor volcanoes that are much older. And the Alboran, Mal de Alboran, we also have some volcanoes down there. But let's now focus and zoom in even more to my region, Garrocha in Catalonia. Now you can see that the reality here is entirely different from what we see here in the Canary Islands. It's very damp. We have 100 liters of rainfall per year. 1,100 is there compared to 100 here. So we're talking about 1,000 liters of rainfall more every year. And the soils are very rich, and we have a great biodiversity and human populations as well. So the question is often asked is, are they active volcanoes? Let's move on to the next slide. This is not La Garrocha, it's a simulation, a historical simulation. The last eruption was 8,000 years ago, so this is a historical recreation of an ancient population closer to the sea. Well, the sea now is about 30-40 kilometers away as the crow flies. But during the Neolithic era, there were people, and as I say, it's not written down in the annals of history, but there were people who would have seen an eruption in La Garrocha. That's 9,000 years ago. So the time periods are much more extended than the Canary Islands. In fact, we have an active volcano right now in Lanzarote. There was a volcanic eruption in the 18th century as well. So this is the Algroscat volcano in the natural park. It's a non-volcanic region, but we have flat valleys, we have lava flows. This is all created by volcanic activity in the not-too-distant past. And I read around. I've read reports by economists as well to understand how we can relate volcanism with society. And Ernest Lluch, back in the 1960s, who was the Minister of Health in Spain, was a passionate fan of La Garrocha, and he tried to investigate across Europe what parks had been industrialized, because going back to the 18th century, there was significant industrial activity, beginning with the textile industry, paper factories. And in fact, there still is an industrial tradition in this region. So it is or was originally a very rural area. And the idea is that we're talking about shared regions with shared activities. In simple terms, we're not talking about it being simple shared regions. They're not so simple, but they are shared. But there is so much more value, much more natural wealth to these regions because of the volcanic soil, because of the people that have been working there. Now, obviously, we're in La Geria on the island of Lanzarote. There is nothing simple or simplistic about what is done here. The work that has been done here is exceptional, to say the least. So this is the region, the area close to my house. I live in a rural estate an old Catalonian house next to this valley. Here you can see we have pasture lands, woodlands. In fact, this is the most wooded area of Catalonia. And this is due in part to the volcanoes. Next slide. You can see there are not lava flows here, but this photo was taken only 3 weeks ago. We have beech forests, and it's thanks to the volcanic soil that we have this, because they've enriched the soil, they retain the humidity. We're talking about 400 meters of altitude in this part of Spain. Normally, this type of woodland would grow at 800 meters, so this helps the soil to be more fertile. Another slide. In our region, there is a school of art, the Buchajolot School of Art, which is based on landscape paintings, and this was a painting in which you can see the ancient landscape traditions. You can see it's eminently rural. Another picture. It's a Montstelkop, which is near Olot, also very famous. And I would like to spend a couple of minutes on this image, because there is an onion, a wonderful, sweet onion, which is grown in this region. We will hear about this from the chefs from the restaurant later. And in fact, there is a whole range of different anecdotes about the growing tradition in this region. You can speak to local farmers about this, but in simple terms, volcanic soils make grass and vegetables sweeter. There's a basaltic plateau next to a valley which is not basaltic, and the shepherd there says that the sheep, when they take them to this area, and they literally escape and run to the volcanic fields to eat the grass because it's sweeter. But when the shepherd takes the sheep to the other plains that do not have basaltic soil, then the sheep don't want to go there. You can't even fool them to go there. And this is quite simply because grass that grows on basaltic fields are sweeter. My parents were farmers, and they had a cow. And they explained that they sold their cow to another farmer who took them to another cow, and the cow almost died because it quite simply didn't want to eat the grass growing in those fields. So you can see that even for cows, the grass is greener on the other meadows that are basaltic. And in this image, you can see also that there are certain different points of geological interest where people can go and understand and learn more about volcanic activity. This is the Akroskat volcano, and you can see that our architects have created a path for interpretation of volcanic phenomena and so on and so forth. This is Casefit de la Roca, which is a village which is on top of a basaltic cliff, which is also another point of interest at the local level. You can see also different routes over the lava flows, and you can see the Giant's Causeway of Ireland, but here in our region. And again, we have guided tours, interpretation of local geological phenomena. And we also have signage explaining the geological phenomena. And this is a great attraction both for locals and for visitors that come to see and understand the phenomena that you can find in our region. Another product that ties society and volcanoes together is, as you can see in this photo here, we have a lava flow, and this is what we call practicar. This means that the bedrock is slowly converted into agricultural land through human efforts over the years. And this was done in the 18th century. And we have seen in the past that there was the conversion that happened in Spain over the past, how the churches were then reformed and people began to work in different fields and how they started working in different areas. And the lands, in fact, were confiscated from the churches and they were shared out between the people. And then they started to work the lands. So how were these lands made into agricultural lands? Well, these were valleys, and they were highly populated in the past. And why were they so populated in the past? Here we can see another close-up of a wall. And let's move on to the next slide. I would like to just dally a minute on this. This is Machine. It's a wetlands area of the region, and you can see that it was originally a lava flow, but it's become as it looks today. And this is where industry began. There was a certain textile called the Indianas textile. It was first produced in Barcelona, and then they brought it to this zone and copied it here. But because of the chemical properties of the water, because of the lava, they managed to create a red dye that was unique to the zone. And this is why they began to create textiles. And the textile industry took off in this region. It was a cottage industry, but then it began to grow across the region. And this is because of the specific features of the volcanic rock that creates the Indianas textile with this red dye. This was at the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century. And the city of Olot at this time, at the end of the 18th century, had nearly 20,000 inhabitants, and Barcelona was only 13,000. So Olot was the fourth biggest city in Catalonia at this time. And this is due to the Indianas cloth that was being produced. There were no roads. They all had to be transported out of the village on primitive carts. And there was such an explosion in the population that they had to expand across the lava fields to be able to house and feed all the workers that came flooding into the village. And because of this production, they began to use the energy created by water so that they could create these new factories. And then they created a paper factory, textile factories, and so on and so forth. And this is why we have the water features that you can now see. This is within our region. And you can see that because of the economic growth of the region, because of the volcanic soils that led to the economic growth of the region, that led to the building of modernist buildings, as you can see. This is the town of Olot. Barcelona, naturally, as you all know, has the Gaudi modernist buildings, but we also have some wonderful examples in the town of Olot, such as this building, which is next to the town church. Next slide, please. Other villages that retain their agricultural essence, but you can see they are very medieval in their shape. This is Santa Pau. This could be considered, it's next to Santa Margarita, which is where the last eruption took place, and this is a tourism center, the capital of the volcanic region, so to speak. Now let's also look at the local products. And we geologists call these indicator products. There are many different, but one fine indicator product could be the fejols de Santa Pau, which is a type of bean that we grow locally. They are also DO, and they have their protected domination of origin, and they have to be grown on modern volcanic soil, the endosols. So to grow these beans, you have to grow them on these types of soil, and if you do not grow them on these modern volcanic soils, then they are not protected by this designation of origin, by the PDO. So these beans are very popular. They can be mixed with butifarra sausages and oil and onions. And they don't need to be peeled. They retain their essence, their aroma, their flavor, and they're highly appreciated, much appreciated. And they're also very expensive because of the added value of the PDO, so they are almost worth their weight in gold. Now I'd like to quickly run through a few slides on certain aspects that I think might be interesting. We've seen the overview of the volcanoes, but we can now have a close-up look at the textures that we find on volcanoes. Now, this doesn't really mean anything in terms of social knock-on effects, but the simple beauty of the terrain is worth remarking. We can talk about lava fields and volcanoes, but if we take a look at the layers of a very explosive eruption, you can see there's cross-stratification in these terrains. This is a pseudo-pumice. It's a pumice-like material. We've seen this in La Palma, vesiculated stone. And these are little treasures, little jewels that you find when you explore volcanic regions that really are very interesting. This is aragonite. This is a thermal crystallization process that produced in the emission of lava from volcanoes, and you can see the beauty of it just by looking at the picture. And this is the last photo. There is a central aspect to tourism, the guides. You can create interactive museums, put signs up all across the landscape, but that would mean nothing without a guide, the human touch, someone who can explain what's happening in the zone. These people are the pillar upon which the whole business is based, because you need this person who can explain what's happening. But if you do not have the right kind of labor conditions to have a good guide, then we're talking about arid landscapes, because there's no explanation. We talk about cooking. We need to be able to train up cooks and help them, support them. Farmers for local agricultural landscapes, but we need guides to explain the history of our landscape. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope I haven't run over by too long. Thank you very much.
Bueno, lo que quería decir es que
Well,
cada vez me gusta más dar charlas.
I'd just like to conclude by saying that I like giving talks, just explaining with photos, but if anybody has any questions, then I'm happy to answer them. Because really, we have many apexes or apices of pyramids, and below that, like in Giza pyramids in Egypt, you can see the tip of the pyramid, but there's much work carried out on the bottom layers. But yes, I think that you've shown us the green lands of your region, the beech forests. But if you come here, you can see that we're talking about entirely different volcanic landscapes. Are we going to have to wait 8,000 years to see something similar here? Or do we need rivers or different vegetation? No, climate is the most important aspect. It doesn't matter how many years you wait here, you're never going to have green landscapes unless there is a huge change. But it's true that the Sahara 6,000 years ago was like a Garden of Eden. It was full of steppes and grasslands and forests. And quite simply, it's changed because of climate. Because of climate change, the Sahara is now a desert. But no, you're never going to have lush green vegetation here, as we see in the north of Europe. There's something I didn't explain before, but La Garrocha is a kind of island unto itself. Let me explain that. It's a volcanic island within rocks that are not volcanic. And in social terms and ecosystem terms, it works as if it were an island, not an island within a different landscape. But no, certainly here the climate would have to change substantially for the landscapes to become green. And then it's perhaps more for a sociologist. But I would ask you this. Now, what would lead someone to build a home in these landscapes? No, we're very lucky in La Garrocha in that 1,000 years have to transpire between one eruption and the next. So certainly it will pay off in the long term building a house. But yes, it is true that here in the Canary Islands, you have to draw up a hazard map of possible eruptions in the future, and certainly you have to do this kind of mapping exercise if you're going to build a house near a volcano. But in La Garrocha, we don't know where the next volcano will erupt. So perhaps the best approach would be to build a house next to a volcano, because we know that this volcano is semi-dormant and won't be erupting again in the near future. So as I said earlier, we need to look at the landscape, and we also have to understand what kind of volcano are we talking about. People ask me all the time, are they going to erupt again? But monogenetic volcanoes, like the volcanoes that erupted in the past in La Palma, are not going to erupt again. But if we look at what's happening on La Palma, are you still learning? Are you learning anew every day, or are you never surprised by anything? No, I think you learn all the time. And in the case of La Palma, when the eruption is over, I'd like to go there and do a comparison exercise to see the newly produced rocks from this volcano. Look at the lava, see if it's different. Is the ash there different or similar to the ash that we have under our fields in La Garrocha? So I think that we can learn a great deal from it. I think one of the volcanologists said that it's often best to not intervene immediately. We have to be able to recover this land, particularly on the island of La Palma. So what do you think? Should we stand back and leave it alone, or should we try and recover it? I think that certainly we need to place limits on where we're going to step in and recover the land. We've seen that craters have appeared and lava flows have flowed out. And obviously, if you want to work on that, I think the human effort would be too great. So you can create a natural area of protection. You can create a visitor center. And then, well, in the case of the layer of ash all around this eruption zone, you certainly can step in and intervene and do something. In fact, here on the island of Lanzarote, you've used all the ash. And I think it's incredible. We heard the explanations yesterday about how this ash was spread across the island and it was used for farming purposes. But yes, the volcanic cones and craters and the lava flows, I would leave them as they are, untouched. We can create natural areas. We've seen this in Iceland, where they nearly closed the port, and how people were fishing in the sea, and then they were watching the lava flows as they were flowing into the sea, and they've created a tourist itinerary. So you can see how the houses were destroyed by the lava, and how some houses have been invaded by lava. So you can create a geological route or tourist itinerary. And if we conserve it well, then it can be used as an educational exercise. People can go and see that volcanoes have erupted, and this is the process. We can plan, and we can think about mitigation efforts, because we'll never have zero risk, but we can bring risk down by mitigation efforts.
Does anyone have any questions? If not, we'll move on to the next speaker. We were talking about sweet onions, you mentioned. Are there any other particular products that come from this area? Well, there's no particular ingredient apart from what I mentioned, but the livestock is particularly of good quality there because of the quality of the land. So the beef that comes from this area, and also lamb as well, is of excellent quality. The ground is extremely fertile. You can have quite a variety of products rather than focusing on intensive farming of just one. You can have this extensive agriculture, and this gives added value. For instance, the jaboco Iberian ham is of excellent quality because the pigs are able to move around the countryside. I remember at one point a doctor told me to eat this particular type of ham because it was good for your health, and I asked him if I could have a prescription. Unfortunately, it wasn't available on prescription, but the same goes for cows. If they have a lot of pasture land, then of course the quality of the meat is going to be better. There aren't then any specific products. We don't have these geothermal springs, as we've seen earlier this morning, but we do have very high quality products because of the volcanic qualities of this land. So thank you very much. It was a delight to listen to you. We've learned a lot, I think, and I think one thing will stick with us, and that is we are what we eat and we are the land that we walk upon, as you opened with this morning. So we mentioned this sweet onion. I think most of us actually were lucky enough to try this last night. And we're going to hear now from Fina and her daughter Martina. They work at the 2 Michelin star restaurant, L'École, in Olot, in Girona, really situated next to this volcanic area and utilizing it to offer up an alternative cuisine. And I think it's going to be fascinating now to discover how they use their local ingredients. So a warm welcome for Fina Puigdevall and her daughter Martina.
Sí. El vídeo o nosaltres?
Bueno, muchas gracias por invitarnos a...
Well, thank you so much for inviting us to take part in this conference. It's a real pleasure to be here and to enjoy these 3 days in Lanzarote, meeting its local people. We're going to talk about our project and the place, the location where our restaurant is based.
Nuestro proyecto.
Our project.
No. Estas primeras imágenes que vamos a ver son imágenes
these initial images are of the area surrounding our restaurant. As you can see, there are 44 volcanoes actually. This is actually where I was born, in the building where our restaurant is located. My mum was born on the first floor. And as I said, 44 volcanoes in total. The higher part of this land is very, very rough mountainous terrain. And as we just heard, there are many holm oak trees, beech trees, cornfields here. Ultimately, the volcanic soil is very, very fertile, and it leads to a very beautiful scenery. And I think the pasture land is very valuable. It allows us to produce these quite exceptional products. These are basalt columns. There are 20 areas like that. This one in particular is in San Juan de los Fons. This is the I+D. It's a farming area. We source our products for our restaurant from here. We always try to support local products that haven't traveled because, of course, they're more environmentally friendly and they make sense because they are infused with these volcanic qualities. So we're going to explain a little bit about what volcanic cuisine is through some of our tasting menu dishes, always focusing on sustainability and with this volcanic essence. So we're going to have a volcanic soup. It's something that we serve up quite often. The team at the restaurant actually like to always introduce themselves to the diners and present this particular soup. We really are very inspired by the land that surrounds us, and this particular soup that we offer is served in this particular bowl that's made of with a Japanese technique. The materials are baked at very, very high temperatures with a particular smoking technique, so it's something quite unusual. And it's also a nod to the volcanic landscape that surrounds us. The ceramics are made with local products by local artisans. One of our friends actually makes a lot of our plates and bowls that we use. The idea behind this particular bowl is that it's a moment of ritual. It's a way of focusing people's minds on the experience. In this video, we will be able to see exactly how we create this broth that we serve commonly on our tasting menu. So basically what we do is we use river fish, a particular river fish. We decided not to work with marine fish, with fish from the sea, because we're located so far away from the ocean. So we smoke this fish, again, another nod to the volcanoes that surround us. And we use these basaltic plates to present it. So this volcanic broth is made with vegetables from our area and this anguille, this specific river fish. As we just said, many years ago we decided to stop using fish sourced from the sea. It was perhaps a slightly risky decision, but it seems to have worked out well. It was difficult in the beginning because, of course, fish is very popular in the region. It was something very culturally associated with big festivities, important festivities. This decision to focus our dishes on local, perhaps more humble options took some time to stick, but eventually it did. So this is a hen farm. It's been here for a very long time. My mum actually grew vegetables in the allotments here and always had hens. So we always include eggs in our dishes. People seem to enjoy that. This was actually a mobile hen cage, so we move it from one place to another. This is an extended version of the hen coop that we had before. We move it around because they really help us to make the land more fertile. They're much more sustainable than using machinery. And we use leftover bread and other ingredients to feed the hens, so once again opting for more sustainable techniques. This is a specific type of corn that we grow in the area. It's kind of symbolic, serving egg alongside corn. It's a mark of respect for the hens. We have a corn mill in our farm as well. We cook this with alfaro. It's something like polenta in Italy. It's a post-war dish. It's very filling. So, buckwheat is the most typical local ingredient in La Garrocha. It's actually only planted here. This is what it looks like. It has a grey color. But once it's in flower, it's completely white, and the large fields look almost like giant white clouds. I always recommend people that visit the area to come in at the end of September because it's really stunning. There is actually a landscape painting school in Olot, and this is a common theme of the paintings. This particular variety was in danger of extinction, but it's been rescued, and I'm sure that all restaurants in the area use this in their dishes. We serve it in lots of different ways. We use it as a grain, like a rice. We soften it in water. We soak it in water, much like you would a risotto. And then we also serve it with a cracker made of buckwheat. We grind it in the same mill that we use for our corn. We serve it with a beer that's from Frito de la Roca, also in this area. We actually make it with the buckwheat of our area. So it's a way of working with local producers as well. We don't like to be self-sufficient. We prefer to bring in other local producers with our dishes. We think it's important to promote this local collaboration. We need to help to give visibility to these producers in the region that have very unique products to offer, and it's a way of ensuring their survival. They also help us by, contributing these very unique and distinctive products to our menu. This is a dish made with liver and also lamb. The animals that inhabit this area, as I said, they move a great deal, and this leads to a slightly different quality of meat. This was a specific species found in Anpuran, in Arana, and
nos las quedamos y si son machos pues se sacrifica porque solo puede haber un macho por rebaño.
It's a sweet meat. They also help us by renewing the land, and so we don't have to use this agricultural machinery, so once again being more sustainable. We opt for this green cuisine with a circular economy, so we're trying to ensure the survival of this specific type of sheep. We serve this dish with rosemary and thyme. And just underneath you can see this strip of the slice of liver. This sweet meat is cooked with corn, and we present it with some sheep's milk as well in an ice cream format. So it's a sweet bread. And once again, the cooks go out into the dining room to present the dishes. We always like to include this sort of ritual. This is a way of also promoting sustainability as a lifestyle. It's not only a way of cooking, but also a way of living. So we're going to see another video now. Can we turn up the volume? So this is the process of making the ceramics, the plates and cups that we use in our restaurants. Once again, this is the bowl that Martina was talking about with this Japanese technique, raku.
Este espacio que habéis visto es un espacio como muy volcánico.
This area that you're seeing is a very volcanic area. So this is the hydraulic mill, sorry, the traditional mill that we use. This is rubira meat, and it was actually rescued thanks to these dishes that we're promoting in our restaurant.
Los restos vegetales que vuelven al huerto en forma de compost.
So we use all of the leftover, all the waste for composting.
Es que aquí estamos dos, pero somos cuatro.
There are actually 4 of us in the team, the 2 other sisters of Martina, and all 3 of them are involved in our project. So now we're going to serve up this sweet onion that was used in yesterday's dinner. It actually involves 2 different onion varieties. We're going to fill one with mascaro cheese that comes from the Valley of Viana.
Exacto. En este caso, bueno, hacemos una royal de cebolla que terminamos con cebolla encurtida en el huerto para intentar evitar el desperdicio de
To avoid waste in our farm, we like to experiment with leftover parts of our ingredients to see what we can create. We use vinegar, sugar, alcohol to store them, so that is a way of avoiding waste and making the most of these materials all throughout the year. So we pickle the onions, as I said. This volcanic soil is very light, and this allows for the water to soak through the ground and give, create much sweeter products. We opt for very simple dishes with very simple ingredients. What we're looking for is for very authentic flavors. This is a escalivada onion. We use it with breadcrumbs and then this local cheese from the Valdeviana, and we present it with Claudio de Cavanova's pottery. He actually very kindly collaborated with us to make these dishes. In the restaurant, we would usually add a little bit of fried parsley to give it a green touch at the end. Another product that we have in our... oh, thank you. the Santa Pau beans. They have a protected designation of origin, and we serve it along with this caviar. A humble product, these beans, and so we wanted to kind of give it a classy touch by serving it alongside, inside this caviar tin, served with a very soft butter, with a specific wooden spoon that also comes from local artisans. The idea, it's an imitation of a specific spoon that's used to eat caviar with. So as I said, these beans have this designated protection of origin. We start them with this volcanic broth, and then we serve up these beans in our tasting menu, once again emphasizing the importance of the local products and giving them greater value. So we always try and include these local ingredients, and we also open up our allotments, our gardens surrounding our home, offering picnic blankets so that people are able to actually go outside and enjoy their coffee at the end of the meal outside. This logo is great. It looks like a volcano in eruption, but it also looks like a fork. It was designed by a good friend of mine. Actually, we've been part of this collective for more than 25 years now, 27. It's a group of restaurants that are committed to using volcanic materials in our offering. And we're going to end now with a video.
¿Nos hemos preguntado alguna vez el origen de todo lo que nos alimenta? Lo que respiramos, lo que tocamos.
We try and teach people what we're eating, use what we touch, and what allows us to live as we do. If it was as easy as it sounds, why do we complicate our own lives? All we need to do is take care of what surrounds us and what is vital for our existence. Small acts may seem insignificant, but if we added all of these small acts together throughout our whole lives, then perhaps we would be able to achieve this change that we need to achieve with the way we interact with the planet. We need a radical change in how we see the Earth. We need to treat it as another living being. The time is now.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Okay, you're not going to escape that quickly. I'm sure we were missing lots of things, but one of the things that really struck me was how you said your mum used to be in charge of the hens. That you have really transformed everything. Well, actually, it seems, according to one of our clients, we've gone from the primary sector to the tertiary sector in one step. It's true, we've been going now for 32 years, but my parents really, when they established the restaurants over 30 years ago, it was something quite simple. The world of cooking has changed a great deal now that my daughter's generation, they've all received specialized training, and that's more than I had. We've really had this transfer of knowledge from generation to generation. I think that we all really feel a big part of this project. We're very committed. We think it's the right way to go. Of course, we have ideas, and actually, our mum lets us take new decisions. Yes, I want them to create their own things. It doesn't make sense for me to stop them. I don't think they're ever going to abandon the project, and I don't think they're going to let me go anywhere either. Clara, my older sister, actually is the sommelier, and my youngest sister has just joined the kitchen team as well. Actually, this one was the one who began, and I think the others have joined forces to give her a hand. You were saying how you use your own products, but also other products from the area, and I think what you said is very important. We mustn't forget about others in our, in the same local area to support them. Yes, of course, we must look after local producers. We need to showcase their products so that we can ensure survival of these smaller farms. We tried this dish yesterday. I think many of us were pleasantly surprised. Actually, it seemed like a very different presentation yesterday evening to what we saw in the video. Yes, of course, it's always different when you cook somewhere different, no? Of course, we're here thanks to our colleagues who are back in the restaurant, working back home. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, I knew that Benjamin would have a question. The microphone is just there. How was it possible for you to... I think any parent with such an individual personal project like yours, Fina, how did you manage to bring your children in? And so young, actually, you look like you could be sisters rather than mother and daughter. Yes, someone said this yesterday, actually, as well. But it's really unusual to see a family who are on the same page. And usually when there are lots of brothers and sisters, it's tricky for everyone to get on and everyone to continue with the family project. Often, especially in these family restaurants, at least one of the children will go off and do something else. But it seems very curious to me. And I'm a journalist. We're all curious by nature, and we try and understand what's behind the scenes. I really haven't ever seen anything similar where children cook in the same kitchen as their parents or others. For instance, the Roca family who have launched, the children have gone on to launch their own restaurants. I say that we've copied the Roca family. So a question for Martina. Are you developing your own ideas right now? How do you feel? Is someone watching you all day long? Is it going to be your project or is it going to be your parents' project? Well, I think the good thing is that really from the very beginning, Fina has always tried to make the whole team feel really a part of the project, not only her daughters, but everyone in the team. When we go to Imaste, this part of our land, that's where the allotments are located, she tries to make sure that everyone adds their grain of sand so that everyone really takes ownership and doesn't feel like they're working for a family project, but as part of the family. And this really hooked us from the beginning. I honestly... Well, she's done great. I didn't think that it was going to last very long, actually. No, the truth is I love the allotment, and when we expanded the allotment, we had this very small hen coop. I couldn't believe how quickly things moved on. She's really strict when she knows what she wants. She really gets on it. So it really wasn't so hard. I think that we also both think in the same way when it comes to our dishes. We always make decisions very quickly. We decide exactly where to put the fruit trees, etc., in our new allotment. So everything moves very quickly, and everything seems to work very well. And of course, my sisters give me a lot of support. I think they wanted to give her a hand because they saw that it was challenging for her. But I think one of the things that we also enjoy about this project is the area that it's located. I couldn't imagine ever working anywhere else, to be honest. Yeah, we have a really great relationship as well with local producers. We often go out looking for mushrooms or blackberries when they're in season. In La Garrocha, there's a lot of pigs, a lot of pig breeding. There was a study last year on Ranci, which is a particular species in the Catalan Pyrenees, which is also in danger. So we're always trying to keep changing and keep developing. Well, this week there was a bit of a drama about the increase in prices of one famous restaurant in the area. When I think about the work behind these dishes that you're creating, these Michelin star restaurant prices always actually appear quite cheap to me. Every dish has a particular philosophy behind it, and so this process added to the costs involved with growing these very particular products, breeding these hens. I wonder if it's actually worth it, economically speaking, or maybe this chef, David, was quite right in raising his prices. Well, it's really not very clear. There's no answer, but we need to, of course, set a fair price because the people that work in the restaurant work very unsociable hours. And yes, we have to, I guess, perhaps change our business model and adapt. The pandemic actually helped to start with, to forge this path for changes. Well, actually, that's made me think about the pandemic. What happened? How was it for you? I suppose you had some very creative months. Well, we were creating conserves, we were jams and things. We were quite busy, actually, with our farm. Of course, there was a pause in our restaurant business, but we invested time in our farming. We used all of the excess products from our farming, and now we have a permanent stall in our local market with organic products. Yes, we did a lot of pickling products, conserving products, jams, alcohol. We made ratafia, also a champanet, which is a type of sparkling wine with local grapes. We made liqueurs. We also worked on elderflower. So we really didn't stop working. So it had its positive side. It gave us time to do all of these things. It also helped us to slow down and change gear and listen to nature, pay attention to the natural cycle of products, and we try to always reflect this in our cuisine. I think actually this conference is helping us to understand the importance of this, what you just said, and even in volcanic areas we can learn a lot from our surroundings. Thank you to both of you. Big round of applause.
Let's continue. As I said, we're mixing cooking with the technical side, geology, so now we're going to hear one of the most important volcanologists in the world, Anne Fournier. She's French. She's the founder of the Volcano Active Foundation, although she is based in Barcelona. She's going to continue by talking about very interesting aspects. For example, we need to be very aware of the rising volcanic activity because it's going to cause damage to us in the future. We must also be acutely aware of volcanic activity because this could reach the atmosphere. It could even change local climates or climates on a greater level. So I think it will be of great interest for all of us to hear from Anne Fournier, the founder of Volcano Active Foundation. A round of applause. And you have the floor. Anne, thank you.
Hola, buenos días. Casi buenas tardes.
Good morning. Nearly good afternoon. The first thing I'd like to say is that, to echo Llorens, we are always learning about volcanoes. And we learn in the culinary arts, but we learn in the arts in general. And cooking is an art. And it's not just volcanology and the science involved, but there's entire spirit that revolves around volcanic ecosystems. And when we talk about volcanoes or volcanic ecosystems, there are two images, one that strikes fear into our hearts and one that allows us to appreciate beauty. First, that volcanoes bring life, but volcanoes can also destroy. Much like yin and yang, the two opposing forces of this planet. So I've been working with volcanoes for the last 20 years, and 3 years ago I decided to create the Volcano Active Foundation. So, as I was saying, I set up my foundation 3 years ago. Why did I do this? Well, because I think that we really need to preserve ecosystems, we need to study them, we need to raise awareness of our surroundings. Simone Weil, a French philosopher, I do apologize for stumbling over my words, my Spanish isn't perfect, but she said that we have to work on our perceptions of the world to be fair. And if we are fully aware, we can improve our quality of life. Eat better, a great example here, live better, and save lives. And the symbol, therefore, of our foundation is the imprint of volcanoes, the imprint that volcanoes leave on our lives, our histories, the products of the land, the environment, nature, geology. And then 2021, after an extremely difficult year for all, we began with the UN Global Convention. And this is a very important aspect because volcanic ecosystems are now recognized on an entirely different level. Not only on the scientific level by people in general, but now at a new level where we can be or bring about a greater awareness of the impact of volcanoes. And we forget about the impact of volcanoes. Why? Because it's been more than 200 years since the last significant volcanic eruption. Joan Martí spoke about this last year. The last major eruption that had a global impact was the Mount Tambora eruption in 1815, which means that for more than 200 years we have not had a volcanic eruption with a global impact. Now, problems have solutions, but to find those solutions, we must be aware of the problems. That's where we need to begin. So I'd like to open up by asking some simple questions. Where does magma come from? Why other volcanoes do not have the classic volcano shape? We have flat volcanoes, like a pancake. And in this case, we're not aware that we live in a volcanic zone because the classic volcano shape is not what we're seeing. It's not like Mount Fuji in Japan. Why do we have these pancake flat volcanoes? Why do volcanoes have the most fertile soils on this planet? That is another good question worth asking. And in volcanic zones, we have endemic species. Why is the coffee in Rwanda different from the coffee in Ethiopia? Well, Rwanda has more than 67 volcanoes, the greatest number in Africa. Now, Chile and Viviana yesterday spoke about endemic species. And it is true that each volcano has a unique plant species, and chefs can seek these out. And in fact, we heard about Hawaii yesterday. We had a chef from Hawaii who spoke about the cultural meanings on the island of Hawaii. There's a flower called silverwood. Aleakala is its Hawaiian name. I'm sure he can pronounce it much better than I can, but this blooms every 90 years, and then it simply dies. And this is an endemic species. So these are pressing questions. These are questions that I think we need to be able to supply answers to, and if we do, we're going to raise awareness about the world of volcanoes in general. So, very briefly, I work on disaster recovery at the United Nations. I was a student of Professor Marcel Roux, and this professor had a very specific vision of the environment. And Gérard Motel was another professor of mine, the director of the geophysics laboratory at Lyon 3 University. Next slide, please. So, awareness of volcanoes. There are 1,500 active volcanoes on land across this planet. Now, I say on land, this means that there are also more volcanoes in our oceans. And Chino spoke about this yesterday, that next to Costa Rica, there are submarine volcanoes on which we have no information. In fact, there are more undersea volcanoes than there are on land. And we can, therefore, forecast and predict volcanic risk, but we need to have the right tools. We need to be able to study these volcanoes. We need the right kind of equipment and tools. 60% of active volcanoes have no active qualitative and quantitative monitoring systems in place. This, I think, is a very relevant fact. Next slide. Another example of our lack of awareness about volcanoes is that in 2017, they discovered 91 volcanoes in Antarctica, under the Antarctic ice sheet. And if you take a look at the Lyon 2 University website, you can see all of the studies that have been conducted on all of these volcanoes. I think at present only 42 of these have been fully identified. But this is the first map on the left, which is in French. You can see the thermal flow mapping of this area of the world. Another example of our lack of awareness on volcanoes in the world is, as you can see on this slide, this is a link from a civil protection website in Italy. The yellow circle on the right-hand side is Mount Vesuvius. We heard about Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius yesterday. Alongside this, there is a red circle. You can see this dotted line. It's a larger circle, and this is the COOKERY volcano. And as you can see from the image, this is a much larger volcano than Vesuvius. This is an active volcano, Campofrei volcano. And below you can see two screen grabs from the civil protection website in Italy, and what they have done is a simulation exercise. What would happen if this volcano erupted? Campofrei volcano. There are 11 active volcanoes in Italy. So let's return, therefore, to our question. Where does magma come from? When we give talks to children, they often say it comes from the core of the earth. No, that's entirely logical, but no. Magma doesn't come from the center of the earth, because the temperatures and pressure are so high that the melting point cannot occur. In fact, magma is created 100 kilometers below our feet. So magma is created 100 kilometers below our feet, where rock melting point occurs. So Barcelona to Olot, Barcelona to Girona, to give you an example of the distances involved. And I don't think we are fully aware of this. And where does all this magma flow to the surface? No. It comes up through cracks, fissures, through the points of least resistance in the earth. And these are the gaps between the tectonic plates. So if you look at the map, you can see the geographical aspects of volcanic activity. John Marti spoke of this, and Gino also explained this yesterday. But sometimes there is a fault line within the tectonic plates, and this is when we see volcanoes erupting. And the classic example of this is the Hawaiian volcanic hotspot. So what is happening under our feet, and why is each and every volcano different? Why is the earth around these volcanoes so fertile, and why are the characteristics so varying? So why is every volcano different? And why are there some volcanoes do not take the same shape as Mount Fuji or the classic volcano shape? And this is a very interesting slide, and it calls to mind a bottle of champagne. If you look at this slide, it reproduces this classic champagne bottle shape. But also, the volcano can collapse in upon itself. The open, pancake-shaped volcano. And also, to help understand that the magma is different in different volcanoes, we can see the migration of magma on the slide. On Mount Etna, in the natural park around Mount Etna, there is a natural risk there. And the idea is that there's a lift type system for each and every volcano. So the lift stops at ground floor, and then this lift will climb floor by floor up the volcanic building, the volcanic edifice. And the magma, when it reaches surface, is lava, and as the magma rises up the building on this lift, it makes it to the first floor, the second floor. Sometimes it stops a while on the third floor because many people are entering the lift. Then once all of these people have entered the lift is ready to keep rising up the edifice, the volcanic edifice, the building, until it makes it up to the top floor of the building or the volcanic edifice. And you can see how the magma chambers transform over time, and time can vary as well. We have other examples as well. I come from a region where we sometimes make fondues and we add cheese to the pot. We sometimes add wild mushrooms to the fondue. And much like our fondue pot, we can draw the analogy between this and the magma chamber. Each and every person makes their own version of fondue. Some add different cheeses, different ingredients, and you can see that each magma chamber, by analogy, is like this pot. It's like a cauldron. In number 2, for example, we can see that there's been injection of new magma. In the third pot, we can see a crystallization at the bottom. And all of this changes the composition of the magma, and the magma, therefore, that rises to the surface will be different for each individual volcano, and the soils around each volcano will have their own geological identity. And as we heard from Chef Chele, who spoke about the endemic characteristics of his cooking, Viviana also uses endemic almonds in her cooking, native species that are not found anywhere else in the world. So, to give you a very brief overview, we often speak of the perfect volcano shape, and also I've explained to you how many volcanoes can also be pancake flat. And volcanoes are not always formed through the same mechanisms. So we might have a volcano with this type of lava flow, we might have different volcanoes with different characteristics, but let's break them down into main families, the effusive and explosive volcanoes. Some produce more gas and some that produce less gas. And we can break them down by calling them red volcanoes and gray volcanoes, which I think makes it easier for us to understand. Gray volcanoes are cooler, but they're much more explosive, as we saw yesterday with Jean-Marty's photos, the Monte Cetalana and Pinatubo as well. These are very destructive volcanic eruptions. And the volcanic eruption in Colombia that killed 26,000 people. And then we have the other family, the effusive volcanoes, where the lava is much more fluid, less viscous, and they're much more less explosive than the gray family of volcanoes. So this helps us in our mapping exercise. First of all, the fact that volcanoes do not have the perfect volcanic shape, and also they don't all have the same mechanisms. These volcanic products, we saw this yesterday, so I think I can swiftly skip through that slide. And I do often say that we're not fully aware of the world of volcanoes. And therefore we need more tools to understand volcanoes. And sometimes we need to apply basic mathematical principles, because these are principles of science. How many times does a phenomenon repeat, to start with? As I've already said, we have not seen a major global eruption for 200 years. And we've already had about historical records of volcanoes, or our memory, our living memory of volcanoes. We have the memories of our grandparents. And we can go even beyond that. And then in current generations, people quite simply are not aware that volcanoes might erupt. So we look at the volcanic recurrence index. Volcano 6 or 7 on the scale is a volcanic eruption that could occur every certain period. For example, the Mount Tambora eruption in 1816, also in 1816 in Spain and in Europe, was called a summerless summer in Europe, because Tambora released a 35-kilometer high column of smoke and ash, spewing all of these particles into the atmosphere, which shielded the planet against the sun. And this led to a cooling of the planet over a period of a year and a half, between 1 and 2 degrees cooling on the planet because of this volcanic eruption. And in the case of this type of eruption, there's nothing we can do to prevent it. We cannot simply stick a cork in the crater and stop it from erupting. But we can mitigate the effects so that we are less vulnerable. We can act through education efforts, through mitigation programs, and if we do so, we will become more resilient. And to help us understand this a little bit better, we all know what happened with the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and what happened to Pompeii. No, but this is, you can see the little circle, that's the impact of Vesuvius on Pompeii. And yesterday we spoke about Toba. And you can see the scale of that eruption, and this enables us to better understand the scale. I'm talking about enormous dimensions. There's a huge difference between Toba and Vesuvius, as you can see from the slide. The Icelandic volcano, well, with the Icelandic chef in the room, I wouldn't even dare try to pronounce that name. But with the eruption in 2017, all of air traffic was stopped immediately because of the ash in the air. But you can see that it was tiny compared to other eruptions in the past. Now, on this slide, we have a very clear example of the effects of a volcano. We have the eruption at the outset, and then we can see all of the collateral impact, tsunami, impact on the economy, climate change. And at the beginning, I mentioned that we have now the UN Global Compact, and over the last 10 years they have been talking about the fact that natural disasters don't exist. This is quite a key message. What does that mean, natural disasters don't exist? Well, it is a natural threat, an earthquake, a volcanic eruption, and we think that there's nothing we can do about it. But we have natural threats. But we don't necessarily have to be that much more vulnerable. We can educate, we can monitor, we can mitigate. Vulnerability factors include poverty, the urban growth and urban spread, lack of education, corruption. But if we study these factors and reduce these factors, then we can become more resilient and less vulnerable. And that's why we set up the Volcano Active Foundation and work on 3 main areas. The first area is give support to local scientists. We can provide them with materials, with training, and we can reach out to scientists across the world and help them by training them. In Costa Rica, for example, they have learned a great deal about the volcanoes. In Goma, in Olot, Rwanda, Italy. And by cooperating and working together, we can all feed in together to developing greater knowledge and greater awareness in the long run. This is an important part of the work that we're doing. And also, when a volcano does erupt, if we are to be efficient, then we're going to have to work together as a team. That's going to help us save lives. And we've seen that there has been an eruption on the island of La Palma, and if we look at kids, they can't save their PlayStation. But what they can save, what they can rescue from a volcanic eruption is ourselves, our modus operandi, our being, the way we are. And I think that these are values that we need to appreciate. And I think these are values that we have spoken at length about in this conference. Mutual support, help, the values of our Earth, of our planet. And these are values that are repeated across the world. There are endemic species on different volcanoes. And I think that there are important aspects that we need to work on together. We also have a volcano school program. That's the second area that we're working on. And in fact, we work with Gino a lot on this initiative because we are fully of the conviction that we need to educate the younger generations about volcanic risk. And we have this program, we have the volcano school, and we go to areas where there is no volcanic risk, where we talk to children about food, culinary traditions, legends about volcanoes. The volcano in Mexico, for example. And there's a legend about 2 people that fell in love and they were turned into volcanoes. And when one volcano talks to the other volcano, there is a dialogue between these volcanoes, and this is a story, a tale that we tell to these children. So there is cultural cooperation aspects, know-how and development and the sharing of knowledge. And then there are other volcanic areas where we work more on prevention aspects. What do we need to do to prevent risks? Am I okay for time? And if you can go back to the previous slide, at the volcano school in Rwanda or in Goma or other regions, we've seen that there are recurrent problems, serious problems. That children 8 and under, when there's a seismic movement to an earthquake, they panic because schools have to be evacuated, and they need their parents to help them, and in some areas it's impossible to hand these children back to their parents because we cannot simply trace their parents because of the local conditions. So we saw a situation 36 years ago, and we've also seen the case of adoption of children on 26th of May as well. Many children were lost after one of these incidents. We quite simply couldn't trace them. So the next great challenge for a foundation is to set up an international protocol for minors in situations of eruption. And we've also spoken to others who are preparing programs for eruptions and earthquakes. The third area is the preservation of our biodiversity. We've seen that there are endemic species. We have endemic flora and fauna in volcanic regions. We must conserve these species because we have an intangible cultural heritage in these regions as well. We have rituals, musical traditions. We've heard about volcanic cooking traditions, but there are musical traditions as well. There are specific musical instruments, very special musical instruments, and these reflect the spirit of the volcano, and these are traditions that must be preserved. So I do apologize for my heavily French-inflected Spanish, but I hope that I've been able to convey my message, and I hope that you've all been able to learn. Thank you very much. So I think that what is most worrying is the fact that at some moment in the near future, a volcano might erupt and might have a global impact. This, I think, is a worry for all of us. We're learning a great deal about volcanoes. We're also learning about volcanic cooking. And I think now, therefore, it's time to talk to the producers. I think that we need initiatives, need to be set up so that we can recover these regions, that we can sell the products of these regions. I think that we often think that nothing can be done to harness the natural resources of these lands, but we do make products from these lands. So I'm going to ask Elena Barrios, first of all, to come to the podium, and I would ask her to now talk us through the following speakers who are going to tell us exactly what we can find here on this volcanic island. So the floor is yours.
What a wonderful introduction. Okay, well, let's continue this second day of Worldcanic. This lovely weather we've got here in the natural park, La Heria, in this beautiful estate. We're going to have a round table now, and I would like for you all to get involved. We've spoken a lot about volcanoes, a lot about cooking, and now we're going to go to the primary sector, the real origins of what we've seen so far. The title of this round table is Living from the Volcanoes, Making a Living from the Volcanoes. We're joined by Toño Morales, owner of the Vega Costa Eco Finca, also Rafael Espino Curbela from the winery Vega de Yuco, and Ollie Horton, owner and founder of Wine Shop Lanzarote and Wine Tours. Please come to the stage. So now we're going to talk about the primary sector. making a living from these volcanoes. We're going to be talking about business, but without ever forgetting this landscape that we must protect. We're today in La Heria, which, as you all know, and you've been able to experience with the wines that we've tasted, the Dio wines of Lanzarote, this Malvasia wine that's so emblematic of our land. We're going to be talking with Oli as well about this customer-facing side, the tours that he organizes. We're going to be talking about the transformation, love for our territory, all of these things with these three speakers. But I think, first of all, what we should do is ask them to briefly, in just a couple of minutes, introduce their projects. Oli will be speaking in English today. I'm not sure how his Spanish is so far, but we have the interpreters here to help us. So, Oli, please, a couple of minutes now. Could you just explain to us what your project is? This business that you founded, Wine Shop Lanzarote and Wine Tours.
We set up a company here nearly 5 years ago, Wine Tours Lanzarote, and it's a company that specializes in trips to our unique wine region of La Heria, and it operates in groups of no more than 8, and it's with a professional wine guide on the tour. So really giving an insight into our unique landscape here, viticulture, the grapes too, and the winemaking process. We visit as well on a separate tour the local artisan breweries, and the company works well. Obviously during COVID, being an island focused around tourism, that part of the business did suffer, and we used the time to expand the business and start exporting the wines and products from Lanzarote to the United Kingdom and Ireland. So we have a selection of wines from Lanzarote for sale, some of the breweries, some of the beers, and we're also expanding into new products from the island as well. And this opportunity set has given us the ability to do virtual tours as well, to spread the word a little bit more about the new products. Obviously, the volcanic wines in particular have a real sort of following, and they're in vogue at the moment. There's demand for them, and being able to send these wines to customers. Many have heard about us through the tours and the work that we do on the island, but also many wine drinkers that are looking for something new and something different. So that enables us to talk to them about the wines from Lanzarote in a virtual way. Everybody's used to Zoom nowadays.
Gracias, Oli. Conocemos ese proyecto, esa venta de los productos.
Thank you very much, Oli, for explaining all of the different aspects of your business, the sale of the wines and also the tours that you offer in La Heria. Now let's move on to the Vega Costa Eco Finca. Please, Tonio, tell us about your estate. Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, it's really a pleasure to be here talking about this issue in the middle, in the heart of our volcanic wine production zone. Well, me and my brothers and sisters came from an agricultural background, and we've been part of this family project now for the past 27 years, building our own project. We've been able to become much more competitive in the market and offer an added value to our customers. I am a businessman working in hospitality. I have many restaurants, 3 main projects. And we're really trying to focus on this special added value that we can offer to our visitors. High quality products infused with this love and respect for our territory, with the aim of supporting our agricultural sector, which is an important part of protecting our land. As we've heard from the different presentations today, we have a lot to be grateful from our land, and we must protect it. Okay, great. Now, Rafael Espino from the Vega de Yuco winery. Tell us about your project. Well, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. I didn't touch anything, I promise. The interpreter can't hear the speaker. Okay. We have been developing all the different sides of the winery. Of course, the wine production, the actual agricultural process, growing the grapes, the processing, and then reaching our clients and also marketing our products, publicizing them and showcasing what our territory has to offer. We wanted our winery to become a point of reference for wine tourism in Lanzarote. We wanted visitors to be able to come and admire what we do. We want to also make the most of what technology has to offer, so the internet and all these other tools that can help us to spread the knowledge of what Lanzarote has to offer. So we have got three quite different projects with us today. We have an agricultural estate, Doño, which also involves direct sales. We've also heard from the winery, from Rafael, and then Oli, who kind of brings all of these things together and sells it to tourists. And this wine tourism is in fashion right now. It's a philosophy that all three of you are working on in your businesses, this offering. Yes, of course, this is key. We're all aiming for this direct contact with tourists, but giving this importance to our territory. As I said, we've been working for 27 years on our land with this ash. We call it sand these days. That's arenal. And my role was to convert this 540,000 hectares of land, and we wanted to show this transformation to schools and local people. We have examples of how things used to be done for the hens, our camels, our donkeys. We have school visits. These animals were key in the farming estates of the past. Part of our project also involves a restaurant visit that focuses solely on local products. It offers 2 or 3 different dishes that are directly related to the estate, and also a dessert. A dessert's always important. These torrijas de calabaza, these pumpkin, fried pumpkin sweets. We'll actually get to try them tomorrow in the estate. We're looking forward to giving you a sample. We also have a conference center, something quite like this, not as beautiful as this one, because here there is a great deal of history in this particular building. Our conference center is a new building, but we're also offering a similar kind of service. We want to host events like this one or any other kind of event to showcase our gastronomy and offer these estate visits as well. Also within the Finca, which, as I said, will be hosting part of the event tomorrow, we have a direct sales point. I call it a market. And what we want is to have every single wine available on the island, including these organic wines, these eco wines, which is becoming more and more popular. We want to help more people to grow their products in the area, and I want to help them promote their products. What I want to do is to create this market for the Canary Islands in general. I want it to be an interpretation center for the agricultural nature of the Canaries. Because it's clear that just selling vegetables isn't profitable enough. We need to diversify. Yes, I would add just one thing about Tonio's project, is that it also helps to focus on these small local varieties of potatoes, of other plants, so that they don't disappear. He sells little packets of seeds of these varieties of plants that our great grandparents were very familiar with. So during the numerous crises over recent decades, are we looking back to the primary sector now? Is there a refocus on the private sector? Well, I think yes, and not just the primary sector. This COVID crisis has highlighted that globalization is not the right way to go. We need to perhaps, yes, globalize our knowledge, but focus much more on local identities and nature and highlight the value of these things. And for this reason, I really admire Tonio's work. And we are working in a similar vein. And we mustn't forget my friend Ollie here, who helps us to advertise all of our products and promote them, because I really would struggle. My English is not good enough. This direct contact with these clients is really Ollie's bag. So Ollie, you're the creator of these products that sell these products. So it seems that people are looking for experience tourism now.
Absolutely, and from the word go, what we've always tried to do is offer a high-end, very, very personalized service from the first contact with our company to actually leaving, and now we even have a after point of sale for the products that many of the products that we're talking about. So I guess in a way trying to create a circular economy. So we're providing a high-end service, something that people are enjoying, and learning about the island, the product, what's unique about it as well. And I think when the customer has that sort of information, then they're encouraged to learn more about it, to explore more both on the island, whether it be directly at the bodegas or to restaurants at night, purchasing new and different Lanzarote wines or beers, for instance. And then some of the other work that we do is focusing with the smaller wineries as well. We visit the larger ones because that gives an idea of scale. And then, the artisan wineries, an idea of real tradition, and the way that we've seen those grow over the years, it sort of gives them a bit of exposure for their product as well, and that's a very important part of our wine tour and our job.
So, as Fina said earlier, actually all of you are really the guardians of our territory, but you're selling it at the same time, selling it in the best way possible, showcasing the products and highlighting their added value. So, is there a risk that we forget what Rafa was saying, that we must not forget our origins? Yes, this risk could exist, but we mustn't forget that we do need regulation. This is lacking right now. We can't create these new uses if the regulations, if the guidelines aren't clearly set out. I think that here our heritage lands belong to everybody, not just the owners of those particular plots of land. And actually, when you look at Ollie's website, it really makes you want to get a flight straight away to Lanzarote. He really knows how to sell it. I can just imagine an English person who wants to buy a bottle of wine and visits his website. And I'm sure he gets straight on the internet to buy his flight to Lanzarote, and I'm sure he'll head straight to visit you. But then, of course, you'll send him on to other producers in the area as well. But with respect to these risks with this trend for this added value tourism, including experience tourism, as you said, this is something that's impossible with mass tourism. It needs to be a very specialized product, and we need to offer very specific products with specific clients. So I don't think that actually this is a risk for us. I think together we can work along the same lines and offer something of quality that we're all able to make a living from. Not everyone comes here in search of the beach and sunshine. They come for other reasons, for culture. I'm sorry, I talk too much. Yes, well, I do agree with Rafa in many things he said. There is a need for business people who, of course, are the most affected by this need to find a balance in our project, and also public administration, their role in defining the roadmap for the future. I remember there was a document in the past, this moratorium on building new tourist developments, and if it weren't for this law, then we... No, I'm not talking about this particular document. I'm talking about the first urban planning document, and the only one, actually. This actually struck off many different hotel establishments, different hotel beds, and it reduced the tourist offing, and it was really key, in fact. I think we need something else like this now. We need new regulation, because this declassified tourist beds, tourist hotels, but it did nothing to clarify what we're talking about today, and that's the territory, the primary sector. It didn't define where goats or where camels can be placed, where wineries must be built. But we really need to have this better defined. We can't have these wine tanks directly outside the wineries. I go to wineries all over the world, and they often offer also a small hotel next door, a small place to spend the night within the winery. So why don't we offer things like this? Really, we're just beginning the development of our wine tourism sector. In the beginning, it was about restricting tourist numbers. It was about defining where hotels could be built, but nobody addressed the countryside, agricultural land, because it was something that was abandoned at the time. All of us started to work as waiters in hotel reception because we needed to pay our bills, but now these business people like us and ecologists and everybody involved in this specific sector needs to get on board together, because we don't have enough land. We need to find a balance. So all of these documents, the PIOT document, etc., need to be brought back on the table so that we ensure that construction is harmonious. Oli, do you think that we need more legislation in place, more regulations? When you began your tours in the Heria, did you struggle to get things going in the beginning? Were the regulations a problem for you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, nothing I don't think is clear. I think as well, there needs to be more support for new initiatives. When you're trying to do something new, it's difficult. Things aren't clear. There could be more support. I think that is something that needs to be brought out. You know, especially trying to do these different things. I think, you know, there's a way of doing sort of larger group things, but I think the world has changed now. You know, people want smaller groups. This was even before COVID, and then COVID has only intensified that. And also, when you have the smaller groups, things are much more personalized, which gives a real sort of connection between you and the client. And in that situation, I think they learn a lot more, and also are more likely to you know, keep enjoying that experience once the experience is over, whether it be in the local restaurants or in the wine bars, for instance.
Aquí se abre un gran debate, ¿no?
Well, it seems like we're having a debate about the balance between this sustainability and also this economic development. So how can we make sure that the regulations do continue to be built and economic development continues, but how do we make sure we're not lost along the way? I must underline that I think we're actually all on the same page here with regards to regulation. There just aren't any. And so we could essentially do anything we wanted. The risk right now isn't that there may be an imbalance. What's happening is that we're in a situation now that we don't have any regulations. We've all, you know, lived our whole lives. We think along the same lines. We don't want this mass tourism. We want to respect our environment. We want to showcase what we have, but we're not able to refer to any specific regulations. So that's really the problem. Yes, I agree with what Rafa said, but I want to go back now to the time of destruction when this island was destroyed that went on to create this fruitful situation of now. Of course, in La Palma, we must show our respects to these people who are going through a very difficult time now with the volcanic eruption. But we must never forget that with this destruction comes transformation. I knew a woman from El Hierro who said it was almost like a patchwork of different contributions from people that allowed us to grow crops, to feed ourselves, and over the centuries we've been able to sell these products to create cuisine with it. And then César Manrique came along and changed everything. And thanks to them, we are where we are. But without them, we would be in a very different place. What we need is clear rules. So, for instance, to say that you can't tear down dry stone walls. Often you're driving through the countryside and you can see people doing this, but they shouldn't be allowed to. But they should be able to create new arenados, new wine-growing fields here. Yes. So there are controls on hotels, there are controls in the hospitality sector, but in agriculture, the water supply, for instance, perhaps you don't know, but this island was the very first European territory that managed to set up a desalination plant for sea water. The driver of this project brought electricity directly to the island. Actually, when I was born, and I'm not that old, we didn't have electricity in my house. In my town, actually, we didn't have electricity until the end of the 70s. We couldn't use electricity for, watering our crops. Yesterday we heard from a historian who talked about rationing of 5 liters of water per day. So this development of the water supply was what helped us to open hotels, and today we can just turn our taps on and have fresh water. But we need this water supply for our countryside as well, and the politicians must talk about this. All of these social development projects, these culture, gastronomy, territory projects are worthless if we don't resolve key problems. Yes, every town has their specific issues, but we need authorities to address these so that we can all work in the same direction.
So, you put in a request and people can't meet those requests. So, if any individual person has a small-scale project or aspiration, and even if everybody agrees that this is a great project, they cannot develop it. I've seen 3 projects today in this chat with very romantic origins, we could say, and we can see how people have been able to overcome their differences and the challenges that they've had to face in building these projects. I would like, therefore, to open this debate to the general public, please. So you've been telling us about the difficulties that the people, the men and women, have had to overcome living on this island, this volcanic island. And therefore, we've heard 3 different projects, 3 wonderful projects, but let's speak about the future. Ollie, please, tell us about your future plans.
Okay, so the future, I guess it depends on the opportunity set and the regulations that were just talked about before. There is lots of energy for me personally, and also I see on the island more now than ever. We have something here that's incredibly beautiful, incredibly unique as well. And I think Rafa pointed out earlier, people aren't just here for the beaches. Lanzarote has a lot more to offer. We're visiting the Eco Finca tomorrow, which is a new idea, a new opportunity for the island as well. So certainly no shortages of ideas, but I think the stakeholders need support and clear guidelines to be able to invest in the future.
Wow, absolutely, yes. We have a future, naturally. With so many resources, we've advanced so much, we cannot say there's no future. With people in the past who have had to overcome the hurdles, but our young people are the future. My daughter is running the eco estate, and suddenly we keep talking about how to progress together. But how are we not going to progress into the future if we have the best educated youth in the history of the planet? We have the greatest of resources. We therefore have everything we need. And I think also we're pretty sure about what we don't want. We've been talking about sustainability, about cooking, about sharing knowledge with people here at this conference, with people that are coming from abroad who are sharing their experiences and knowledge with us. Now, only 10 years ago, there was no project on the island that brought together producers, restaurant owners, and everybody. The government set up a project called Taste Spain, and we had the island level part of this project. Let's taste the island of Lanzarote. And through this, we invited people from abroad to share experiences with us. And I think that we've seen the effect. And not necessarily saying that we can boast of excellence across the island, but we do have a window of opportunity now where we can display what we have. We do import produce, potatoes from Israel or potatoes from the UK, but we have potato producers here, and I think that we certainly have all the assets here in place. So therefore, we should be able to believe in the future for everybody because we're all rowing in the same direction together in the same boat. And we have tourism as well, and tourism is bringing positive knock-on effects for the island. Let's talk about wine. 10 years ago, there's a vote on the island's wines. There was a debate when they harvested the wine. There wasn't a market. There were not human resources in place to harvest the wine. We didn't have the infrastructures in place. But now, 10 years later, I think that any restaurant owner can be proud of any single wine that's produced on this island. That's positive. But what does this mean? Well, it means that the wineries are now producing wine because of all the work that they've done. We didn't even have cheesemakers on the island because we took all our milk to the neighboring island of Fuerteventura to produce cheese there. But now we have dozens of craftsmen and women on the island with international recognition. And quite simply, this is because we've been joining forces. We've had the private sector working together with the public sector, island government or national government, all together building what we have today. In the past, quite simply, we wouldn't have been able to do what we're doing today. All of us have been able to sit down together, we've been able to talk to local authorities, we've been able to create this conference, we've been able to build a path for all of us to follow together. So, therefore, future, wonderful. First international conference on wine here in Lanzarote, on cooking. We've basically laid the foundations so that we can work together. I hope you've understood. Rafa, future. Microphone, please. Also, I think I could say that the wineries are really working in the same direction. The cheesemakers, the potato producers, we're working hand in hand. And I think our thinking is also joined up. We're all working in the same direction. So what's happening now? Price of potatoes is rising, but the quality is good. Price of grapes is going up as well. What does this mean? Well, it means greater profits can be made by the people working the land so that their livelihoods can be guaranteed. And I think also this means that they can be satisfied with the work that they do. You're skilled in this or that trade. You can do it. Now, I am an optimist. I am a little bit demanding at times, but I'm an optimist and I want to continue to live on this island and to live from the bounties of this island, yes. So we've spoken about volcanoes, we've spoken about the past, we've spoken about a bright future. And a word that we've heard many times today is the word pride. How we're proud of this island, of our land. And this is a pride that we can transmit to people that come to visit us on this land, this island of volcanoes. Any questions related to the issues of today? Rafa? Cooking, yes. I'm delighted with the state of play. It's a key part of our economy. We're closing the circle, really, by being able to eat local fish. No? And how do you get on with restaurant owners? Yes, there is this continuity. There's this wonderful relationship that we have. If we know that a restaurant owner is going to offer local wine, then that's good for all. The consumers might be locals, but if someone comes from abroad, the first thing that is offered to them is local wine. But also, together with that, local potatoes, local produce, local products. The fishers can work and be proud of the work they do. Restaurant owners know that Lanzarote can be exploited to the max, and I think that really this creates a perfect harmony across the island. Oli, before we came into the room, we were talking about the fact that you have customers don't even like wine, but when they see this landscape, they go crazy about the wine.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a real diverse list of clients and customers on the tours. We have people that have had zero experience when it comes to wine. Some never even tried wine before. And at the other end of the scale, wine professionals from as far away as the States on a more regular basis than you would think. And no matter what the experience is, they're always shocked with the landscape here in La Heria. And to learn about the cultivation, the serious amount of hard work that goes into producing just a single bottle of wine with the temperatures that the workers have to deal with, the very, very low yield and manual labor. It really is, we're very happy to be able to sort of share that with them.
Normal. Se vuelvan locos con este paisaje.
Yes, they love the landscape. So, living with volcanoes and wine shop, wine tours, Lanzarote, Oli Horton, and the Eco Estate that we will be visiting tomorrow, Vega Costa, with Antonio Morales, and the wonderful wines that we've been able to sample with Rafael Espino from Vega de Yuca winery. So, a brief conclusion, a couple of words. Living off the volcano. I was born on the flanks of a volcano. But if you have visited these volcanoes with your parents to play in the ash and stick your hands in the soil literally to try the wine and the grapes, and seen how your parents have had to labor so hard, where it's had periods of drought, and they've been able to produce a few lentils, a few chickpeas, and goats. And we have, I think, seen certain sadder episodes in the past of the people living on these islands, and we've seen this suffering of our parents and their forebears, how they have suffered to work this land. And tomorrow you're going to see this project. And when I wanted to set up the project, I spoke to my wife and I mentioned that I was going to invest in this crazy project. And back in the 1980s, people invested in real estate. But this was, a dream that I had. And I think that we've been able to bring this dream to fruition. We've been able to recover our land. We've been able to exploit our lands, and I think that people should be able to invest in their land. We are going to see the development of the island through the volcanoes, the National Park of Timanfaya. We have wonderful visitor centers. We have the Enarenado stone mulching systems on the island. And I think that, therefore, we owe a debt to our heritage. It's not going to be about building hotels and visiting beaches. There is more that is needed for our island. This is why we must make urgent demands for regulations that are going to help this island develop. I've been working on my eco-estate for 27 years. I invested in our countryside, and there are other people who should be able to do exactly the same, make good quality investments in developing our island, our landscapes. And I would, therefore, offer a word of thanks to our grandparents and their parents who have built this island that now thousands of people are living. Ollie, conclusion, living off the volcanoes.
Yeah, I agree with many of the things that Tonio mentioned just before. But I think listening to many people that have been at the Congress over the past 2 days and hearing many of the personal stories, that we all have a unique opportunity with our landscapes to look forward with positivity for the future and sharing many of those unique traits of those lands. And that's especially true here in Lanzarote.
Para terminar, Rafa.
To conclude, Rafa. Microphone, please. Microphone. So, to speak about living here, living off the land here, is a special feeling. Now, I could speak about the past, of going out with my father, and we would go and contemplate the setting sun as we'd sit on the flanks of a volcano, and this is our land. And I would therefore thank the volcanoes. Certainly humans have come here, they've sculpted the landscape, they have transformed the landscape. Therefore, I think we can also be grateful to generations of the inhabitants of Lanzarote that have made this island what it is today. And this really, I'm speaking from my heart now. I would say that we have given even greater quality to this island. Thank you, Tonio, Oli, Rafa. Thank you so much. Thank you for living off and from the volcanoes. Thank you for sharing your passions with us. And I hope you continue to look to the future with optimism. Thank you.
Pues ya vamos a concluir esta jornada de hoy.
This brings today to a close. Tomorrow we are going on a tour of the Vega Costa Eco One estate. We're going to be talking about Oregon cooking with Ryan Whitehouse. We're going to have round tables tomorrow, one about volcanoes and one about volcanic cooking, and this will then bring us to the very end of this 3-day Congress. The bus will be leaving shortly, but we'll have just a few minutes to enjoy the landscape, and then we're going to the Montaña de Fuego restaurant. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.